Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the Colored In podcast. I am your host, Nai. That's NAI because I'm neat and interesting. So today we're going to be tackling our last pillar. So we're finally kind of run through the course of all our themes and we are stopping at wellness. For those who may be new to the series or not familiar with our themes, let me be the first to welcome you to the crew. CREW, CREW, is an acronym for the four themes this podcast focuses on. It stands for career and culture, relationship, education, and wellness. If you want to know a little bit more about the start of the podcast and the meaning behind these themes, be sure to check out season 1. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram, like our post, share our episodes, and DM us your feedback at _colored_in. So, like I said, today is our wellness episode, and I want to start us off with an affirmation. The time I have is valuable and worth savoring. Okay, repeat that with me, guys. The time I have is valuable and worth savoring. So I saw this affirmation while I was scrolling through Instagram, and it kind of just hit home with me. It made me kind of think about the way I go about my time, the way I kind of throw time away, and kind of how it's just fleeting. There's always that age old adage that time lost is never found. And I'm sure that we all have this warped sense of time now as we enter month 8 or 9 for some of us of quarantine, of social distancing, of COVID-19 caution, work from home transitions, etc., etc. Let me ask you this. How many times have you said, whether during this pandemic situation or throughout your life, if only I had more time, I'd do this, or I'd get this done, or I'd complete this task, or I'd take up this hobby, or learn this skill. I know personally for me, I've definitely said it several times throughout my life, throughout my day, throughout a 30-minute workout, honestly. Sometimes I want to go longer for my workouts, but I'm like, no, I have to get ready for dinner, or I have to get ready for work, or I have to get ready for a recording session. In college, I always was running. I always felt like I never had enough time to do anything, but that's because I was a part of so many clubs, so many associations. I was double majoring, so I was like being ambitious with my academic schoolwork. So I know that is probably one of the most top sayings or top phrases I've said within my lifetime. And it's funny because in college, I remember I had taken a survey for a PhD psychology thesis. And they were trying to understand what stress looks like across different majors. And they published the results in the thesis, which I was able to get a copy of at my alma mater, which is Fordham University, for anyone who doesn't know. There's a symposium where people can submit like really big projects or theses or like works of art that they've worked on throughout the school year and have it exhibited where the entire school can see their work. So I got the results through there. It was actually really interesting, and it actually pulled a lot of attention from faculty and students. And when I read the paper, I was mostly excited because I knew I was a participant, but I was also a little bit interested about the results, because they always say like, oh, medical majors way more stressed out than like fine art majors or economics majors or whatever the case is. So I was wanted to see if that kind of held true. So I was reading the survey, and so to give some details, it had gotten over 2,000 responses, which for me, I thought that was huge because Lincoln Center, for anyone who's not familiar with how Fordham is kind of separated, there's a Lincoln Center campus and a Rose Hill campus. And Lincoln Center specifically, which is where this PhD student was having her classes and held the majority of her survey, they don't like Lincoln Center cannot even handle that many students within the building. Like at the time, they probably had less than 800 students between all the 3 buildings that was on that campus. So I'm almost positive that the survey even trickled over to Rose Hill. And that was cool. It was cool that it kind of garnered that much attention and it gained that much traffic amongst the student population. So yeah, it was about over 2,000 responses. And one of the interesting facts, or one of the interesting results that was published, was that 43% of the respondents said that they would feel less stressed if they had more time. And 27% said that they haven't even addressed their stress because they don't have the time. Like, they're too busy to even think about the fact that they're stressed. Dang, like, talk about a catch 22. Like, for the most part, we attribute stress as a result of not having enough time. And of course, we know that time management, or the lack thereof, is probably one of the biggest contributors to having stress in the first place. So it's almost like we're looping around in a circle. So I thought that was like a very interesting result that came out of the experiment and the survey and analysis. So, based off of that memory, also just based off of like the past couple of months that I've had in quarantine, I think it's safe to say that what I'm experiencing here, and what some of you might be experiencing, of course, is the scarcity of time, or like the feeling that there is that time is a scarce resource. And I want to make note here and say that partly the reason why we're feeling like that is it's a simple fact of life. Like, there are only 24 hours in the day. We can't escape that. But I do think there is something else at hand here. And I think what we can do is actively try not to fall into the mental trap that we will never have enough time. This trap that I'm about to kind of explain to you guys, it was first thought of, or first communicated to me at least, through a book that I read. And it was co authored by a psychologist named Eldar Shafar. And the name of the book was Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much. And in the book, it's kind of explained as, when you fall into this mental trap, you end up having little or no cognitive bandwidth to take on important but non urgent long term changes that can increase your productive time. So, an example of that could be addressing your stress with lifestyle changes, like sleeping more, eating well, reconnecting with your spouse or with your friends. And the way that kind of manifests within life is that we end up feeling like we don't have enough time. So we're not allowing ourselves the ability to focus on creating the habits that lead to long term sustainability for our mind, body, and spirit. And that's how we kind of fall into this mental trap. So we're so stuck on feeling like there's not enough time for us to get what we want to get done, that we're kind of always rushing. And with us always rushing, we miss out on creating those habits that allows us to slow down and feed our bodies and our minds and our spirits with the things that can help us be more productive and be more and take more advantage of our time, so we don't feel like we're rushing so much. It's such an interesting concept that Shafir mentions, and I would recommend anyone who has the opportunity to please pick up the book. Again, it's called Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much. It's a really great book, and I would recommend you guys to pick that up. Continuing on to this. So, all right, now we figured out that we're kind of in this mental mind state that's keeping us kind of locked into this negative feeling that we don't have anymore, that we don't have enough time. And we're always stressed because of it. So I had to think, I was like, okay, so how can I get out of this? How do we get out of this? How do we rephrase our mind, our mental state, to get out of this trap, and get rid of this thought that we don't have time? And kind of brainstormed a little bit, asked around, read, had conversations with my family and friends to kind of see what they felt about the topic, the theory. And I made a small little list of action steps that I said I was going to implement to see if it could make a change or make a difference. And I would say that it absolutely has, at least for me. So I want to share that with you all today. So my first action item would be to block off time as simply unavailable. So in the book that I mentioned earlier, Shafir recommends penciling a block of time in your calendar just to think about long-term and long neglected things. So when you block out that time, it's for you and no one else. And if people asks you to schedule an appointment that day or during that moment, straight up tell them that you have a meeting. and you have a meeting with yourself. There's no need to say that, oh, I'm sorry, I have to check in with myself. Sorry. I mean, you're more than welcome to, but you're not obligated to give them that level of information. And yeah, you keep that commitment to yourself, because part of what makes you overwhelmed is that you never feel you have time to iron out all the little administrative household tasks that are so easy to dismiss. Which, so like for me right now, that's like vacuuming and doing my laundry. Because they're still kind of low and minuscule, and granted that my laundry isn't crazy because I'm not going anywhere anyway, so it's so easy for me to lose sight of those things, but they're still kind of contributing to the chaotic feeling that I'm experiencing. So to stop that and kind of stay ahead of the game and on schedule, by making sure you have time blocked off to handle your business, you're giving yourself that wiggle room to tend to your needs and tend to your chaos, and no one else's. And you're kind of being unapologetic with giving yourself that time back to kind of sort yourself out and get your life in order. So I would say that would probably be my biggest number one. Definitely block off time for yourself and only yourself. For my number two, I would say invest time in something that's not urgent. So I'm a big fan of the television show Parks and Recreation. I don't know if anyone is a big fan, but I love that show. So, and two of the characters on there, Tom and Donna, they have, there's an episode that shows where they have an annual and indulgent, expensive spa and shopping tradition that they call Treat Yourself. And while a full on shopping spree might not be in your budget, I definitely think that they're onto something. You know, don't underestimate what a little R&R can do. And you may think that treating yourself is a luxury, or not. I know I don't think of it as a luxury, I think of it as a necessity. But I want to let you guys know that if you feel like it is a luxury, it absolutely isn't. It just simply is not. Taking time to enjoy yourself, whether that includes getting your nails done, reading a book, listening to a podcast episode, it's important. And it all sends a message to your minds that all is well. Like, in fact, all is so well that you can take time out to enjoy yourself and do something that you enjoy. You free up the cognitive bandwidth that we mentioned earlier to manage and improve with your busy life by giving yourself these little gifts of time that you can use to give yourself rest and relaxation and entertainment, and just have fun, right? So if there's anything that you can take from this, I would be adamant about making sure you give yourself that rest day. My rest days are Sundays. And it doesn't have to be a Sunday for you. It might not even be able to be a whole day, but give yourself that time to kind of be a little bit indulgent to yourself, spoil yourself a little bit. So those are my two bigger action steps. My third action step was inspired from some other readings and research that I did. So for my final action, I would say we have to schedule some time to give away. And I know that seems to contradict numbers one and two, but the interesting thing about this is that what you do with your time actually has a huge effect on how you feel about your time and yourself. So this actually came out of a white paper from the University of Pennsylvania. It was authored by Professor Cassie Mogilner, and she actually found, and I pulled this quote straight from the white paper that I read, and she said, "Giving your time to others can make you feel more time affluent and less time constrained than wasting your time spending it on yourself or even getting a windfall of free time." Not only that, she also said that people who help others feel more capable, confident, useful, and more in control of their time. So that made me think, like, okay, so then maybe it's also important for me to also dedicate a little bit of time to others and be intentional about it. One, because it has a opportunity to have a bigger positive effect with you being able to help out your community. But two, when you can give yourself to a cause or to a project or to a person that has meaning for you, you feel a lot better about how you're spending your time and the impact of the time that you are losing, because you know it's going towards something meaningful. So I thought, although it's a little bit contradictory to what I've said in number one and two, it just still makes a lot of sense, right? Because what we said at the beginning of this is that the time I have is valuable and worth savoring. And I think that savoring piece comes in piece one and two when we block off that time to ourselves and decide to um, spoil ourselves with that blocked off time, or get ourselves in order and sort everything out in that blocked off time. But valuable is also like making sure that the time that we're using, or the time that we have, can be contributed to a worthy cause, to a cause that has meaning for you, to a cause that can be bigger than yourself, as well as add value to your life, whether that's spiritually, mentally, or physically, or to other people. Those are my three tips for you guys. Definitely block off that time, make it unavailable, and be unapologetic about it. And of course, do not bend or release it for anyone else. That's your time. You don't tend to anyone else but you. And how you decide to use that blocked off time, it could be with a little bit of R&R. It could be with you to kind of reset and restart and kind of schedule yourself to sort yourself out and kind of get rid of the small little errands that you've been pushing off. That I would advocate that you give yourself that R&R, but use it however you want. Just make sure it's contributing, it's a contribution to yourself, and it can manifest in any way that you need it to. And then thirdly, give yourself off to a cause. It may feel a little bit stressful to add something else to your itinerary, but the good feelings and the positive effect of that, I'm going to say, charity work that you're doing, kind of comes back full circle, and that positivity kind of falls right back onto yourself. And it's going to take time to kind of work on these action steps and put this into practice. I know definitely when I made this list and I tried to be intentional about putting it into practice in my life, I fell into a couple of roadblocks. There were a couple of times where I completely fell off, and I was working 12-hour days and then eating and then going to sleep and waking up and doing the same thing all over again. But I can say that at the time when I was consistent and intentional about sticking to this action item list, it really did have positive and powerful effects for me. So I would encourage you guys to do something of the sort, do something similar, or take at least one and kind of try to incorporate to your day-to-day lives. You're going through a very crazy and hectic time right now, and the most thing that I would advocate for is for you guys to take care of yourselves and really dive into this journey of wellness so that we can sustain our lives and our peace. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I know our lives are complicated, and we are never going to figure out how to add more hours to the day, no matter how much we try to. But please take the time to give life back to yourself. So that way you'll have the strength of mind to find a path toward health and fulfillment. So that's it for today, crew. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to share this episode with your friends so that they can join the crew. And of course, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcast, Breaker, and Anchor. Connect with us on Instagram at _colored_in, and be sure to leave me your thoughts. I'm excited to hear from you guys and can't wait to speak with you soon.